Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features classic X-Men number 11, cover dated, let me turn this around and see, cover dated July 1987. So this is a reprinting of Uncanny X-Men 103. There's a new cover here by Bob Layton. But what I'm interested in for the purposes of this review and commentary video is the backup story by Chris Claremont and John Bolton. And this is John Bolton's image for the back cover. And you can see that Storm is unconscious on what will be revealed to be a rooftop inside the story itself. And there is a security man standing over her with a raised truncheon. And the image has like dark undertones in terms of the symbolism of what we're looking at there, but the artwork itself is really excellent by Bolton. It's pencils and inks by him, and it's really effective. I like the use of the spotting of blacks and how the cast shadows on the security man's face and uniform, as well as in particular his bald fist there on the left hand, is really effective. And Storm looks vulnerable indeed, which is not how we usually see her in the comics. So let's take a look at the inside cover where we'll get the credits. And the credits for the back up story are Chris Claremont writer, penciler John Bolton, inker John Bolton, letters by Tom Orzechowski, and colors by Glynis Oliver. You can see that the inside cover image is by Mike Mignola, dated 1987. That's a great image of Black Tom Cassidy and the Juggernaut, as well as that. Cassidy Keep in County Mayo. This is, for an Irish person, notorious issue of Uncanny X-Men with lots of stereotypes and cliches in it, including these leprechauns here on the splash page. But like I said, what I'm interested in for the purposes of this video review is the backup story. Now, it's 13 pages of story and art by Bolton and Claremont rather than the usual 12. And it's an interesting story we get here. It's one I've never read before, reading it for the first time in preparation for making this review. The title of the story is Hope, and we'll see whether there is hope at the end of the story. It's quite a dark story indeed, and it begins with this writer, as it will turn out, suffering writer's block. And what I find with these backup stories by Claremont is every word counts. It's all very carefully weighed by Claremont. There are no words that are wasted on these stories. Words, stock in trade, what made my world go round, where'd they go, why'd they turn so nasty, get so stale, a week's work, a ream of paper, typewriter ribbon, ink, cartridges, notepads, cans of Coke, the odd chocolate wrapper, too many cigarettes. We infer that these are all in the waste paper basket bin. All garbage. And there's a phone ringing all through these 4 panels as well. I stare at the white page and all I see is a white page. No pictures, no dreams, no joy. And then there's a message on the phone, so he lets it ring through to Message Minder. Phil here, wait for the tone, so now we know his name. Leave a message, I'll ring back. And who's on the other end? Promises, promises, chump, says the other voice. This is Reg. I'm tired of talking to your bloody machine, Phil. So we know now he's been avoiding talking to this man. I know what you're going through. I'm your editor, but you've got to meet me halfway. I can't cover it for you forever. Have some sympathy for my position, chummo. We're hard up against the deadline. And then he clicks off the call. So what is Phil's reaction to that? Well, he flings the typewriter and the phone off his desk, as well as the coffee mug. You think I don't know that? He exclaims. You think I don't bloody care? The rot of it is, chummo, I don't. So that's an intriguing opening. Really fantastic work by John Bolton here. Great spotting of blacks. Great use of light and shade. Really like the design layout of this particular page. The top-down shot of the man in his work office. The close-up on the waste paper basket. The look at his desk there with the books, the lighted cigarette, This one pinned to a page on his notice board there as well, whatever the significance of that one is. The answering machine and phone. And then, this is so well done. Just even the way the hands are splayed there as he casts everything onto the ground and grabs his head, his hair there, the fingers disappearing into the hair. It's all so well done. And then just the body language as he slumps over his desk with all the papers on the ground. Really, really well done. So this writer, Phil, is suffering from writer's block. And another couple of great pages here. I made a royal mess, he thinks in his first person monologue. Perhaps if I sit long enough, it'll go away. It doesn't, so I do. So he turns out the light, puts on his coat and scarf, and out he goes into the night. But where is he? Well, we'll discover soon enough. Once upon a time, I was cock of the walk, he says to himself. The words came like breathing, second nature. I've lost the words. I'd rather have quit breathing. That was a joke. Why don't I laugh? He thinks to himself. Once upon a time, it didn't matter where I lived. How bleak and sterile the box, because that was only somewhere to park the bod while the old imagination went wandering. I roamed world and stars, crafted the most daring deeds, wooed the most fabulous ladies. It wasn't reality, it was adventure. Till, with a gradual, inexorable, inevitable suddenness, it stopped being fun. So this is intriguing. So he's a writer, but he is a fantasy fiction writer, an adventure story writer. And isn't that Chris Claremont? Isn't he too the same kind of writer when you think about it? And now he starts to speak to himself in the deserted street at night. Years I've spent at your grindstone, Reg, honing my craft, building my rep. I broke my back for the company. Why can't you be satisfied with that? And it's never the second-rate work that gets grief, invariably the top-notch stories, the stuff I put my heart into, I'm proudest of, I care the most about. Now, reading this made me wonder, was this Claremont filtering his own feelings in 1987 into the voice and situation of this fictional character? I mean, by that point, Claremont had been 10 years working on the X-Men, and had he run out of steam? Well, around this time, 1987, he's shaking things up by having the X-Men apparently die in Dallas and then go to Australia and operate from the shadows, and then subsequently he'd shake things up again in the non-team era when Banshee and Forge were out looking for the X-Men who had been flung to the far corners of the world when going through the Siege Perilous. So he did keep things interesting, but did he have some of these feelings? And is he reconfiguring and working them into this short story? So where is Phil? Well, you can see from the background there, St. Paul's Cathedral, a double-decker bus. He's in London. So he continues talking to himself in the deserted streets. Listen to yourself, man. What a whiner. Bleat, bleat, sob, sob. You're a grown man, supposedly, a professional. How often have you been told, nobody forces you to work here, Phil? So why don't I leave? No guts. I'll always be more scared of what I'm giving up than what I might gain. Too bloody comfortable. And then his attention is caught by the GPO Tower. Tallest building in London, he thinks to himself. And we've got a sign there, no entry, please keep out. When I was young, he continues thinking, reading Eagle, its flagship character, Dan Dare, pilot of the future, had one of his most exciting battles around this high-tech needle. Now, this is intriguing. What I was saying earlier about, is Claremont putting some of his own feelings and thoughts and experiences into this fictional character's mind and mouth? Well, one of Claremont's favourite titles when he was a child, and remember he was born in England, was the British comic Eagle. And one of his favourite characters was Dan Dare, pilot of the future. So it's so intriguing to me, wondering where is the line between fact and fiction here? To what extent is Phil Halloran, well, that's his surname, we'll learn it later, a mouthpiece, an insert character for Claremont? Or to what degree is the character simply a product of one line of thinking in Claremont's mind? Everything I saw or read, Phil continues, or even did, had such a sense of wonder. Tower was open to the public originally, but terrorist bomb threats forced its closure. So much for that threat. So of course that would have been the IRA back in the 1970s and early 80s. Normally I'd be a good boy, he thinks to himself, obey the rules, keep my distance. Tonight I don't care. I tried the door. Isn't locked, so in I go. And that seems like a strange detail. Why would it not be locked when there's a sign there, no entry, please keep out? So there must be something up in the GPO tower this particular night. And we need to look back to this page and look at the evening paper headline. Woman killer escapes. Police mount nationwide manhunt. So this detail has to come into the story. Let's continue. Why is the door unlocked? So Phil continues with his dark thoughts. Originally, the circular top floors were an observation deck and revolving restaurant. My folks promised me a birthday dinner there. Ancient history, but the tower was closed before I got it. Fair view, not worth the anticipation. Wonder where the guards are. Never been arrested, new experience, big deal. This was something that Claremont was very good at in this time period, showing us a naturalistic thought process. So there's a kind of like a stream of consciousness going on with Phil's thoughts, and it's intriguing to see that excuse me, in comics in this time period, very particular to Claremont and one of his great strengths. So Phil continues, I should care, but I don't, can't be bothered about that and a lot of things. Like I'm doped, not altogether here, utterly, overwhelmingly tired, only sleep doesn't help. So his symptoms there are those of someone who is very depressed. Where's this lead, I wonder, he thinks to himself. So at the maintenance area, keep out, up onto the roof. So I really like this top-down shot here with the lighting. You can see the faces of the buildings lit up from the street lights, but the rooftops themselves in black because there's no lighting up there. And he continues with his thoughts, Phil. But again, this is coming from Claremont. This is Claremont's knowledge of London. I'm a visitor there many times. And here's what we learn. London's built pretty much low to the ground. Only on the natural rises, like Highgate and Muswell Hill, do you get any sort of spectacular panoramas. There and here. So at the top of the GPO tower, long way down. Should be careful, I have vertigo. I write too much fantasy, can't go near a drop without wanting to leap off and try my hand at flying. Wanting so much and nothing more so than oblivion. Is he going to jump and kill himself? And then off panel there's a voice, you should not stand so near the edge. You might fall, someone up in the air. So this takes him by surprise. Who, what in heaven's name? And it is an X-Men backup story after all, so it's Storm. And that's a really great anchor image of her there. A lighting from the sky flying around London, introducing herself dramatically there. I am Storm. And the guy thinks to himself, I'm hallucinating, my mind snapped. But he says aloud to her, you're real and you can fly? Of all the bloody luck? And she asks him, why are you angry? And he replies, and this is typical Claremontian style, my business. A lot of characters are like that in Claremont's works, where they're kind of locked tight about their feelings, and then others are more open-hearted. So anyway, he continues, look, you wouldn't understand. Why should you even care? You don't know me. And she says, your face is familiar. And that face there looks a lot like Chris Claremont in the late 70s, early 80s. Of course, the hair color of this character in the story is black, but the style of hair and the goatee beard, that was Claremont's style at the time himself. Like before he became middle-aged, as he was around the time of X-Men #1, adjectiveless X-Men #1. So the last of his youth, really, here. I think Bolton's going for it with this particular character. In any case, Storm says, your face is familiar. And he thinks to himself, yours, unforgettable. Have we met, she asks. Not even in my wildest dreams, more's the pity. So he gives his full name here, Phil Halloran, and Storm recognizes him indeed, the writer. And, you know, what coincidence, she's read his work. I only recently discovered your work. I enjoy it very much. I'm happy to meet you. So she's a reader of fantasy fiction. That's interesting to learn about Storm, since her whole life is fantasy fiction in many ways. You'd rather expect she'd be interested in a different genre. So the guy responds rather brusquely, let's stay strangers. Be modern, be sensible, go our separate ignorant ways, and leave it at that, okay? Let's continue. And Storm is tactful here in her reply. Forgive me, she says. I was alone. I saw you alone. I sensed a pain in you, a great sadness I thought to be of help. So he's flattered, he says, but there's no need. And Storm continues and says, we're both human, my friend, both alive. More than sufficient reasons, are they not, to hold out a hand? So this is Claremont's ethos here coming through what Storm is saying. Shared humanity, like that is a theme of the X-Men that goes back to Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, but this is Claremont's particular version of it. And the altruism of the X-Men as well, at least in this era, the early era, because this is Storm in the early era. And the writer replies, but not always to take the hand that's offered. Storm continues, I've soared hard by the Reaper most of my life, oh man, seen death claim friends and loved ones and strangers with impartial efficiency, faced him myself at times when it would have been terribly easy to yield, and no doubt will do so again. It is better to fight, Philip, to live, to create, to grow. The end will come quickly enough in the natural course of things. Why hurry it along? So that's her presentation, her speech to him to not jump off the edge of the tower. And what's his reply? What about those who can't create anymore, for whom nothing grows? Who are you to say my natural time has to come when I'm old? Why not tonight? Why not now? He shouts. So he really is in the slough of despond with no inspiration. And I rather thought at this point that, you know, Storm could be a type of muse for him, and she seems to get the idea herself here. You would be missed, she says. That'll pass, he replies. You mean to jump then? Thoughts cross my mind. Why, she asks him, why not? Perhaps I can provide a reason. How? By teaching me to fly? And so she does in a manner. Would that were possible, but I am a mutant, that power I was born with. However, I can show you what it is like. So she lifts him up with her command over the wind and the natural forces. Relax, Philip, she says to him. I shall not drop you. You're safe with me. Coherent thought is impossible, he thinks to himself, much less speed. At first, all I do is make noises. Gibbering idiot, that's me. This can't be happening. I really like the different body language of Storm here as she's flying. She's like floating. She's very used to the element of the air, whereas he's all twisted and very. You get the sense of how uncomfortable he is, and also I like the way that that Bolton is drawing or using the jacket and the scarf to imply the wind up in the air as well as they move about too. It's really well done, and the drapery on Phil's jumper as well, and trousers, really well done. So now he's enjoying himself finally. So you can see that on his face, and then his thoughts. In the darkness, the city lights sparkle like jewels, stretching far as the eye can see. As high as we soar, the street sounds can't be heard, so I make my own. A wild, wavering, wailing, whooping cheer. Storm laughs, so do I, really laugh. Been ages since I felt the urge. So now he's enjoying himself, much more comfortable in the element of the air. And he says, it's winter, you know, we should be freezing. And she explains, the elements of nature are mine to command. Hence the winds that hold us aloft are warm despite the season, and my little cloud brings gentle rain, not snow. So you can just see that slightly indicated there. So now he's enjoying himself. Ah, my lady, he says, if my friends could see me now. And she replies, and mine as well. But for all my powers, Philip, I cannot convey the wonder and glory of them, the quiet serenity of this moment to others. Show them firsthand, perhaps, but never tell. That is your gift. So this is the end of her efforts to persuade him to not take his own life. That's the whole point, he replies. It isn't my gift, not anymore. The words won't come. They're flat and sterile, with no joy and less meaning. The passion, the special fire that made my stories memorable and worthwhile, that's gone. The work's become an exercise in technique, structure without substance. All that's left in me and my work is pain, Storm. You get that gets worse every time I put pen to paper. I can't do it any longer. I won't deceive myself by trying. So she says to him, then find something else. But he's a writer, he insists, there's nothing else. Turn things around. If I snapped my fingers and took away your powers, how would you feel? What are we without our reason for being? Storm, why don't you? And then why doesn't she answer? Because she's been knocked on the head by, look at this silhouette, this shadow about to emerge from the rooftop door. And now we have our back cover scene there with this security guard standing over Storm. Bloke wears a guard's uniform, thinks Halloran, but even in the moonlight I can see how poorly it fits, and see as well the madness in his eyes. So, we've got a further complication in the plot of this story. How is this going to pan out? So the guy is dragging Storm to the stairway, and she's unconscious and bleeding from her temple. And of course he has a Cockney accent. I'm not going to attempt to give you how a Cockney accent is pronounced. Been listening, I have, right? I'm not going to do any more than that. Just imagine Dick Van Dyke in Mary Poppins. Sad story, broke my heart. You want to jump, mate? Be my guest. My business is with the flyaway girly bird. So Halloran recognizes him. You're the killer, the one the police are after. So remember the headline earlier on the newspaper? And you can see he's got like a scarred face as well. Monstrous appearance. So he says, righty right you are, my bright young buck. Go to the head of the class. Crack a skull, steal a suit, and the blue bottles pass me by. That's the police. 'Cause I look like one of their own. Crack yours too. You cross my road. So Halloran there with Storm's headpiece and the blood on it. Is she dead? He thinks to himself. My fault. She stopped here because of me. Was so intent on my problems, my needs. She left herself vulnerable to that maniac. I didn't ask her to get involved. I read the papers. I can imagine what he'll do. More blood, an awful death. Stop him then. He'll kill me. Isn't that what I want? But if I save Storm, she'll stop me. So this is his dilemma. He's right at the edge of the tower again, and he decides to come down. So Storm is regaining consciousness. He is bested by the murderer, who cracks him once, twice in the jaw, but that gives Storm time to get up. Vision will not settle, she thinks to herself, sick to the stomach. Thought shattered, no strength to focus, concentration so hard. Stay awake must, she thinks to herself. And then snap of ozone, air that's burning, flash of lightning from Storm's outstretched fingertips to the killer, hoarse shriek torn from his throat. So he's blasted and then knocked into the concrete wall. Gust of typhoon wind, thud of bone on stone. Hope it hurts. Hope he's a broken rag doll. I tried to stop sobbing. This is Phil. Takes a while. Too much hurt. Far more fear. So then he puts his jacket under Storm's head. You saved me, he says to her, and she replies, you provided opportunity for me to gather wits. See how tiny is the lettering there by Tom Orzechowski? That's very difficult to do. Orzechowski, really, really excellent in terms of how he was able, with hand-lettered work, to give variation to Claremont's dialogue, which of course is why Claremont paid Orzechowski and Glenn Solver, the colorist here, some money from his own royalties, which they weren't entitled to, you know, like by their contracts, but Claremont gave them some of his royalties in order to keep them working with him. So he continues, he says, don't rest, don't try to talk to Storm. You may be concussed. I'll tie up our prisoner, then ring for police and ambulance. And she whispers, and afterwards, a baby has more strength than her hand when she grabs me, a whisper more force than her voice. So he responds, you know, is there going to be a big, happy resolution to this dark story? It's my life, Storm, he says, to do with as I please. And she pleads with him, then, my dear friend, with all my heart, I beg you, do not throw it away. So he walks away. Which direction? Question's always been, will I be doing that by dying or staying alive? And she replies, while you live, you hope. The title of this story, remember, hope. And with hope, there's always possibilities. But this is how it ends, with Halloran's thoughts, maybe and maybe not. The choice is mine. What choice does he make? So Claremont leaves the ending here with this writer suffering writer's block, depression, as to whether he's going to kill himself after all of that or not. Like, there's no comic resolution to this story. It's dark, but really interesting, and again, intriguing to consider whether Claremont might be making something of some thoughts he's had himself concerning, you know, working for Marvel circa 1987. But at this time, you know, there was fresh creativity for him, working on Excalibur. Coming soon, he would do Marvel Comics Presents the Wolverine story, Save the Tiger, and then on into the regular Wolverine title. You know, he was busy. He was writing New Mutants at the time as well. So quite a creative period for him. And as well, as I said earlier, sending the X-Men to the Outback and then having the non-team era after they go through the Siege Perilous. He became creative, but did he have a moment of despair that is being worked into this story and used in the story? I do wonder. Well, I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on the backup story, Hope, to Classic X-Men number 11. Let me know your thoughts on this one in the comments section. If you enjoyed my review and commentary, please like and share the video. It really does help the channel. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.